What is up, my fellow geeks, nerds, and everyone in between? My name is Adam, and in today's video, we're going to be installing Huginn on Debian 12 without using Docker. I'm not going to go into all the reasons why I chose to go this route yet, but maybe in a future video. This video is kind of aimed at people who are a little bit familiar with Linux. Maybe you're kind of like late stage beginner, not quite yet intermediate. I think the Huginn team is really putting all their chips into the Docker container, and so the info's out there on how to do it without using Docker, but it's really scattered. There's a lot of sort of guides that maybe kind of assume you know more than you do, and so I'm just hoping this video is going to be a one-stop shop. You can just come in here, follow these steps on a clean install of Debian 12, and you'll be up and running in no time flat. All right, so let's get to the point, but first I do have just a little bit more housekeeping to go over. My ultimate goal for this video was to make it, at the very least for people using Debian 12, just a turnkey and drive solution. But when I started to produce this video, I tried to be aware of maybe assumptions I had about you, the viewer, in my head, and so I just wanted to make those clear. And so my assumption is that, I don't expect that you are a Linux expert. But what I do expect is that you know how to get at the very least Debian 12 up and running on your machine, and that could be either as they say on metal. It could be in something like a KVM hypervisor or VirtualBox on Windows. Heck, it could even be like Linode or DigitalOcean. But I'm going to assume you know how to get like I said, a Debian-based distribution up and running, get logged in, and you at least have a little bit of command line skills. And what skills you lack, you're very adept at using a search engine or something like ChatGPT to fill in the blanks. But though, once again, just to restate it, this video should be a turnkey solution, step by step, for Debian 12. And then, like I said, I'm using a fresh install. I don't know if you've had Debian 12 running. Maybe you've got some other stuff going on that could cause problems. I can't really warranty for that. So, but what I can say is if you follow these steps, at least as of Debian 12.4, in very short order, you will have an instance of Huginn up, running, and very much ready to use. So, and then I've also heard a lot of people say, well, why not just use something like Zapier or IFTT, I believe it's called. And so I haven't personally used those, and they might be awesome. But so Huginn is great if you're the kind of person who likes to sort of take things into their own hands. You value your data privacy. You kind of value having control over all the inputs and outputs. And so, if you're looking for like a swipe your credit card and go type of thing, then maybe one of those other products are for you. But if you don't mind really rolling up your sleeves and getting your elbows dirty, Huginn is a really awesome thing. So without further ado, let's get going. Let's get this thing up and running. All right, so let's get this install going. First I'm going to SSH into my computer running Huginn, which I have locally here in my house. But like I said, it could be in the cloud or, something like Linode or DigitalOcean. First thing we need to do is, so we're ultimately going to be running Huginn as a service. And so we're going to add a user for Huginn. And this user is just, we're not going to give it like shell access. It can't actually log in at the terminal like I am now. So you're going to type that command and you're going to enter your sudo password that you created when you installed Debian. We're going to go ahead and add Huginn to the Huginn group, or we're going to create a group called Huginn and add Huginn. And so then we are also going to, with that same command, I'm going to backspace the second Huginn, and you're going to want to put in your username for your Linux install. And so essentially I am adding myself to the Huginn group. Lastly, for that, we need to set some permissions on the Huginn home folder so that we can do things there. And so that command right there will give us permission for that Huginn home folder. We're going to want to log out so that those changes will take effect, and then we're going to want to log back in. Once we are logged back in, we're going to start the process of installing the database for Huginn. So in this case, I'm using MySQL 8. And so we need to first install GNUPG. All right, so we've got that installed. We're going to go ahead, and this step is optional, but I'm going to go ahead and make a temp directory for MySQL, and we're going to change directory into it. And so that just keeps us from cluttering up our personal home folder. So this is the version of MySQL at the time of recording this video. Yours could be different. I'm not going to guarantee that you won't have problems with the future version. But as of producing this video, hey, this one works great. So we're gonna run that command, and we next need to sudo dpkg/i, and then you should be able to tab complete the mysql.deb file. And so we're gonna go with that top choice, MySQL 8, and we're gonna say OK. And so now we need to update apt, or our repositories. So sudo apt update. All right, so that's all good. We should now be able to sudo apt install my, could I type more? SQL-server. Please pardon my keyboard fumbles. We are doing it live. All right, so go ahead and yeah, set a good root password. It's gonna ask you to enter it twice, of course. Be sure to make a note of this. You will need it later. And I'm gonna go ahead and say, yeah, let's use the strong password encryption. All right, so we're gonna go sudo systemctl enable -- now MySQL. And if you want to go so far as to, you can sudo systemctl status MySQL, and so that'll show you that the MySQL service is indeed up and running. That's optional. Assuming you didn't get any errors, it's probably fine. So yeah, we can continue. So now, essentially, we have got to compile Ruby from source, and so it seems to be that Huginn won't properly work, or you can't properly get it up and running with anything past Ruby 3.22. But since we are compiling Ruby from source, I'm going to paste in this long list of prerequisites, and I'm going to go ahead and let me move my camera out of the way a little bit so you can see that better. I'll probably put this all in Pastebin or something and link it in the video description, but those are the prerequisites or dependencies we're going to want to install. So I'm going to do that now. All right, so the next thing I'm going to knock out is, so look, Nginx is the preferred web server for Huginn. They did have some information on how you could maybe also sub in for Apache, but in this case, I'm using Nginx. And so what I want to do is I actually want to add Nginx to the Huginn group. And so we're going to do the sudo usermod -a -G, type Huginn, that's the group. And then you may have to check on your system using like top or something, but in most cases on Debian 12, Nginx should appear as www-data. And so we'll run that command, and Nginx has been added to the Huginn group. All right, so now for the really fun stuff. We need to install Ruby. And like I said, I can't recall if I mentioned it previously, but as high as you want to go on Ruby with Huginn is 3.22. And so this link right here will download the source for Ruby 3.22. I tried later versions, and there were some just like gems that didn't work. So stick with 3.22 would be my recommendation. So that command will download Ruby, and then we are going to tar-xvf. And so that's going to unpack Ruby into our temp directory. So let's cd on into that Ruby directory. And so now what we want to do is this next command starts the build process. We are actually compiling Ruby from source. On Huginn's website, they kind of recommend against using sort of some Ruby package managers that exist because they can cause strange issues. I'm not super hip to what all those issues are, but that's why we're actually building this from source. So you're going to type /configure disable install rdoc. All right, so we fast forwarded to the future because that, at the very least should probably take a couple of minutes. And so assuming you've done all the other steps up to this point correct, that should be complete with no errors. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually go ahead and compile Ruby. And so for this, we're going to use make -j nproc. yeah, let's start it, and I'll see you in about 5 or 10 minutes. All right, well, hopefully that went well for you and you didn't receive any errors. And so we're going to do sudo make install. All right, so now our next step is to run a sudo gem update command. So I'm going to paste that on in there, give you a second to look at it, and this is the next command you're going to want to run. So let's do it. And so the next command is going to be sudo gem install foreman, and make sure to append this stuff on the end here, this -no document. We're going back to MySQL, and so we want to log into MySQL as root with this command right here. And so this is where that password you set earlier that I told you to make a note of comes in. So we're going to type our MySQL root password, and we are now greeted with a MySQL prompt. The following command sets this NODB as the default engine for MySQL. This might even be optional. I never tested that, but this should be in this version of MySQL the default engine. Just to be safe, though, we're gonna run that command. And so you're going to want to create a Huginn user inside of MySQL. And so we are going to use this command. And so right at the very end where it says password, go ahead and make sure you actually change that to the password that you want to use, and make a note of it, because you will need it later when configuring Huginn. We also need to grant the MySQL Huginn user all of the privileges it needs. And so this command right here will do that. So we're going to grant all privileges on Huginn_production to the Huginn user at localhost. So boom, we're going to hit enter. Lastly, we need to do the MySQL flush privileges command. And then it's a \Q to exit MySQL. But essentially, if you put that in, it will ask for the password you just created for that Huginn user. And so that should be password in this case. And it should give you an error, unknown database, Huginn production. And so that's because we haven't created that database yet. That's ultimately something that when we start up Huginn, that'll happen. But that kind of lets us know that our user we just set up in MySQL is actually all good to go. Next thing, we're going to need to change directory into our home/Huginn folder. We are going to want to clone the Huginn Git repository into that folder. And so we downloaded all those dependencies earlier, and so everything should run smooth for you there. We want to set this parameter. We want to add that Huginn directory in there. And so change this last part if your path is for some reason different, but we're adding the folder that we just created from cloning the Git repository as a safe directory. And then we're going to cd into that folder. So our path, or your path, should look something like this right here. Next, we want to Huginn uses a .env file for some config stuff, and so you want to run this command here. So if we ls/al, you'll see this .env file, and so those are environmental variables. All right, so this next command will create various log and temp folders for Huginn. And so you're going to want to make sure to run that command right there. We want to change some ownership and permissions with these following commands. And so we're just kind of ultimately granting that Huginn user permissions to read, write, and execute and such. Now let's make sure our permissions are set correctly. There we go. So this whole group of commands here should get it done. And then lastly, we need to copy the example unicorns config. I don't think I had to touch this one, but ultimately my notes will remind me here in a little bit. All right, so this is where we're actually going to take a look at the Huginn .env file for the first time. I am not going to spend a great deal of time on this. There is a installation.md file on the Huginn GitHub that kind of goes in over this stuff in greater detail. So I'm just going to give a quick gloss over it. So this up at the top, this app secret token, we'll come back to that. As far as the database adapter MySQL 2, that's fine. I think for this database encoding, we want to use UTF-8 MB4 for just wider character support. the database name, we need to change to production, since that's the database that we created. And so let's go ahead and put in our password. You can actually change this root to Huginn, since that is the user that we created for that database. Other important stuff, yeah, we want to go ahead and set our Rails environment to production here. I'm not going to force SSL, I'm just kind of running this at home. I'm not going to have any other users on my Huginn, so I don't really care about invites. There is down here an email configuration section. I was able to get this working with Gmail. I'm not going to go into great detail on the email portion. You know, if you're going to have other users, that is something you need to figure out, just in case you want them to be able to get like password reset emails, things like that. But I will say with Gmail, I use port 465 and I changed SSL to true. And you do have to go to Google's website and go into your account that you're using and generate an app specific password. You can't use your regular password. And so that's pretty common. Let's see, I'm trying to recall. Yeah, there is one last thing I think I wanted to cover. There is a few commands, or are a few commands that we're going to run after this to where I'm in a different time zone. So we're going to use something called rake to get the correct formatting for our time zone. And then we're going to use another rake command to generate the secret at the top. And so, yeah, that's it. I'm using Nano, so I'm going to Control X. I'm going to save the modified buffer. Basically means save the changes. Went a little too far ahead in my guide. So you're going to run this nice long command here. And so it's sudo, and you're kind of running it as the Huginn user. This just kind of, when we bring up Huginn, makes some of that bundle stuff happy, or actually makes the bundle install happy, I should say. Okay, well that should have taken a few minutes, but assuming you didn't get any errors, we're all good to go. So here's the big thing. Here's what really tripped me up and would probably keep a lot of people from going forward. So we're going to want to nano edit this .rb file. And so there are some issues with this RB file that generally keep you from progressing any further. We're going to want to look for the word EXISTS, so exists. And we're going to go ahead and change it to exist. So just go ahead, there should be like 4 of them if I recall correctly. I'm using Control W to search through Nano. And this should be the last one. Okay, no more. So we're going to Control X and hit Y to save our modified buffer or save our changes. And so then I'm going to cut this part out, but we're going to run this next command. It's a rake command. And so we're going to run it as the Huginn user. And it's basically rake secret. And so that's going to spit out a long token that we need. Okay, so I've gone ahead and just cleared my screen, but once that rake command spits out the token, I went ahead and used this command and just edited, or went in through Nano and edited the env file and added that token at the very top. So that's the command right there you're going to want to use. And so this next command is going to go ahead and kind of print out our time zone in the correct format. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy this since I'm on the East Coast of the USA. Then we're gonna go back into Nano with this command, and we're gonna update our time zone down at the bottom. You could probably leave it as is, but I'm just gonna go ahead and do it because hey, why not? So just as a refresher, that API token is at the top, and for whatever reason, I'm just not going to show mine, but it should be a long string of letters and numbers. And then you're going to want to come down here, and I'm just going to go ahead and within these quotes, I'm going to update the time zone from Pacific to Eastern. And so we're going to Control X, save modified buffer, yes, and then enter to exit. All right, so now we've got through a lot of boring housekeeping. We're going to go ahead and do the really fun stuff. And so this command right here is going to create our database for Huginn. Okay, we're going to go ahead and run this migrate command. And then finally, we are going to run this command, and the default login for Huginn's web interface is going to be admin and password. You can change that now or change that later. If you do change it now, just make note so you'll be able to sign in later on. I'm just going to leave it as default, not change anything. All right, so let's go ahead and precompile our Huginn assets. I'm going to move that up a little bit so you guys can see, and it'll sit there for a second. Might not look like it's doing anything, but it is. All right, so assuming that all went well for you, we need to now edit our proc file. And so I'm going to type that command to open up our proc file. We need to go ahead and comment out the development section stuff. We're going to go ahead and uncomment these lines, making sure to leave no leading spaces. And there is like a threaded worker you can run, or there's an old separate process version. I'm just going to go ahead and use the threaded worker for now. So go ahead and make those changes, and that should be everything in the proc file. So we're going to Control X, Y, and enter. Finally, well, not finally, we still have some more to do, but we're getting there. You're going to want to run this command, sudo bundle exec rake production : exports. This next command will set up log rotate, excuse me. Let's ensure Huginn is running. Cool, Huginn is running. This next command pertains to the Nginx web server, and so it's going to copy some stuff from the deployment folder in Huginn to the available sites folder for Nginx. Okay, that second command finishes us off there. All right, we need to now nano edit part of our Nginx config. And so what we're looking for in here is this section, your server's fully qualified domain name, or FQDN. And so I'm using Tailscale, so I'm going to use my Tailscale domain, but I would assume this would be the local IP address of the box you're running Huginn on. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added my fully qualified domain name to that config file. There's probably some other stuff in there you can mess with. I'm not super well versed with Nginx. It's something I want to get into later, but either adding like your Tailscale, the little domain name they give you, or your local IP address should work fine. Let me know in the comments if you have any issues there. Our next step, we're going to go ahead and remove the default Nginx site, being that, in this virtual machine, Huginn is the only Nginx site that's going to be up and running. We'll just get rid of the default. We're going to go ahead and validate our Nginx config. And so everything looks good. It's happy. Your output should look very similar to mine. Lastly, we're going to restart the Nginx service. And right here, I like to go ahead and restart Huginn for good measure. Sorry about the dog. Okay, so we've stopped it. We're going to go ahead and start Huginn again. And then we'll just do a status check, which I would imagine will spit out something very similar to what we just saw. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and reboot my machine for good measure, and we'll go open up a web browser and see if we can access the Huginn web interface. All right, so we are back. I have rebooted the virtual machine, and I've gone ahead and put in my address up here for the machine. Like I said, in my case, I'm using Tailscale, which is really cool. You should look into it, but normally this would just be your local IP address of that machine, the one you put in the Nginx config as your FQDN. So we're going to go ahead and actually log into Huginn. And so admin is the username, password is the password, and boom, everything looks great. Just lastly, you can view the agents that it comes with. There are some, if you go in here, just good things to look at to get a feel for the layout of how you configure these guys. They kind of got some sort of JavaScript object notation or JSON going on. If you go to actions and edit the agent, you get kind of this slightly friendlier way to build your agent. You can toggle view, and you can see if you'd feel more comfortable just editing the little JSON. But here's where you can tie agents together. So like this website agent sends some or its events off to a formatting agent. You can add things to scenarios. We'll go into that more later. You can tell it how long you want to keep the events it generates, how often you want it to update, give your agent a custom name. I think the last thing I'll mention, I don't know, this may be working fine now, but so under scenarios, you can set up scenarios, and it gives you like a really cool kind of flowchart diagram of how all the scenarios are tied together. And so when I originally set this up, the scenarios thing, I would get like a bad gateway error, and it seems to be working fine now. But ultimately, after my last installation that I did, like that started working after a couple of days. I was trying to troubleshoot it. I ended up looking through the logs. I couldn't see anything obviously wrong. And so it just kind of started working, and it appears to be working now. So I'm not sure what the deal is there. If for some reason that doesn't work for you, just give it time. Hopefully it'll straighten itself out. But yeah, that's it. Like I said, this is like the first really lengthy tutorial video like this I've made on setting something like this up. So I'm kind of sorry if I was all over the place or fumbling a bit, but I really do hope, this helps you out. I'm going to be doing some more stuff soon on how to actually use this thing and to make it do something cool. So yeah, have a great day, and happy hacking.